Sarah and Jess, welcome to the Live and Learn podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
For people watching in, do you want to quickly just describe what Access do in both your roles within Access Group?
Yeah, absolutely. So Access is very much a business solutions provider, and it provides a huge range of software across a number of industries, from anything from hospitality to health and social care. The division that Sarah and I sit in is people, so that's all things HR, talent management, but we focus very much on learning. And I head up our partner channel in the learning division and work with lovely partners like yourselves at Video Arts to help support both of us kind of go to market and look after customers fundamentally.
And I'm Sarah Mian. I'm head of learning content at the Access Group, and I head up what we call the Content Collective, which is a team of about 60 plus content creators from multiple disciplines, and we make content across industries, across subject matter. And we also work with about 2,000 plus experts who help us horizon scan, appear in our media, and just make sure that our content is really credible.
And that's a perfect link to this episode. It's almost like we've practiced this, or you have, not me, more likely. This episode is all about the importance of subject matter experts in learning. I think there's a lot of authoring tools, AI as well, are changing the landscape daily almost. How important are subject matter experts? I think both our companies rely on them very heavily. But what's your kind of formula at Access Group with where do they start the process? Is it people who are building, maybe e-learner designers who are building course for the first time? Do you start with that? Do they give the learning points? How does it work for you and your team?
Yeah, so we're moving into this new era of AI-generated content, and I am here for it because it really has helped us improve our efficiencies. It really has sped things up, and so we do use AI for things like generative fill. When we're filming videos, we can use generative fill or text-to-speech sometimes to generate ideas. It's a great co-designer. And in a way, there's not been a lot of angst associated with using AI. It's making our job simpler, so we use it. However, we do it with caution because it is perpetuating the proliferation of rubbish content. Let's be real.
Yeah, agreed.
It's learned everything it knows about creating e-learning off all of the rubbish content that exists already. And so we really don't want to contribute to that content chaos. We want to make sure that our content is still credible, authentic, human-centered, industry relevant. And the way we do that is by using our wonderful subject matter experts. So we really keep them front and center of our content still.
Yeah, it's a key part of it because I think it adds the context and relevance. And I think we had a previous episode about relevance and content really landing. I think you need the brains behind it for that to happen, that process. Otherwise, it can just fall flat and be that kind of click next, or just people skip the course. And I
think from experience, we also tend to find that when content is accredited, you actually get much higher levels of engagement from people. People want to learn from experts. They want to learn from somebody who really knows their stuff. So again, the more people you can actually get engaging it in the first place, the more likely you are to build those outcomes you're driving towards. And I think it makes a massive difference in that first instance of people actually wanting to do it and engaging with it. I don't know what you think.
In fact, there is an influencer effect, right? So actually we are more likely to do things that people whose opinion we respect tell us to do.
Yes.
So if you get the rockstar professor coming and telling you what to do, the practical steps to take, then you are more likely to change your behaviour because you've seen them telling you to do it.
And what would your feelings be on kind of internal user SMEs versus external ones, or do you have a mix of both? Because some companies there's a lot of kind of in their talent pool, a lot of in-house SMEs that you can use and share examples, which can be really good in context, but also there's a place for external ones as well. In terms of user experience, do you kind of use both, or do you welcome both?
Absolutely. I am a big fan of internal SMEs because people have this perception that using experts isn't cost effective, and which is why people are turning increasingly to AI. But actually, it's incredibly cost effective because most people have these amazing subject matter experts within their industry that have probably been in industry in their area for many, many years. So absolutely, the first people you should be turning to are the people within your organisation with the expertise. We use both. So we use both internal experts, but we also look for industry leaders, those who are influencers in the field, the rock star professors of whatever industry. We look for them as well for our content.
And I guess with sort of internal stakeholders and experts, they can help people understand why whatever training they're doing is important to the business they work for, making it relevant to their role, understanding the implications of potentially not doing it, and understanding better the reasonings behind it within the actual organisation as well. So I guess that's quite important.
And actually, Josh Burson talks a lot about capability academies. And this is where your expertise can really bridge that gap between the theory and actually what happens within your organisation. So I do think our internal SMEs are a really good way to take what we know is best practice and actually apply it in the context in which we're operating within our businesses.
And I know we always use SMEs in our content, or you guys do as well. We often have a video recap at the end. They kind of summarise the learning points. But it's that authenticity is really important that they bring, isn't it? I think especially the external SMEs into content to bring that human element and bring it to life.
Yeah, and people are really after authenticity. Like, they're not after perfection, they're after authenticity. And actually, by seeing your subject matter experts and then relaying lived experience, kind of a bit like what we've been doing on the podcast today, you are adding that human element, you are telling authentic stories, and those are the things that engage people. Those are the things that make people connect to your content and make them want to finish it. And actually, very often, an SME is an expert because they've got a deep, compelling passion about the subject matter,
and
right?
It rubs off, doesn't it?
And it completely rubs off.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're basically hooking into that passion, and you are then that is rippling out to your audience. So there's something really important about that authenticity and about creating that huge amount of emanating out that huge amount of passion. It can be really leveraged. We should be leveraging it in our content.
Especially often the people say to master something, you have 10,000 hours of practice. And if you can get that from somebody else and they put all that effort in, that's a big help, isn't it?
Yeah.
The passion.
Absolutely.
It's massive impact from people. If you're someone you respect, the impact on you actually doing something is so much higher than perhaps somebody that you don't. But
it's a separate podcast, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Also, we can really be using our experts to enhance the engagement. So, for example, we have live virtual classrooms. Every week we host about 2 or 3 live virtual classrooms with experts where our learners can actually ask our experts questions. And so that the interactivity on that, the engagement on that is exceptionally high because you actually get the wealth of experience from our experts firsthand. So that is another way that you can really leverage the expertise. And sometimes it's not always possible to have those synchronous environments, right? But you can actually almost cheat that in a way by just having conversations. Like us now, we're just having a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
And that has, that's great because it just engage. People do learn better from people. And so if you can just have conversations with SMEs, that is another really good way to engage your learners.
How do you find the SMEs in the first place? Like, how do you, in terms of the content collective, how do we identify the right people to talk on a particular topic and then I guess bring them in so that they want to be part of it? How does that process work?
Actually, I'm going to throw to you, Simon, and say, how do you find your... So you have you interview lots of people for your podcast. How do you find those people?
Yeah, good question. So, and also we have SMEs for our content as well. So I think for us, it's always the balance between kind of their credibility, so often their academic or their work.
Yeah.
And then for us, it's probably the human skills as well. So especially for e-learning, we want them to be, we have video clips, they're really comfortable, they're charismatic, they're relatable, they're kind of very approachable. So when people watch that content, they're not intimidated by them, but also they are warm, they're kind of warm to them as well. So we don't have like a formula. A lot of it, we'll get a short list and then we'll kind of interview on those things. But to me, it's that marriage between science and charisma, which is quite tricky to balance sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're exactly the same. So we would have a long list and we would look for exactly the same things. We would be looking for the expertise. So they really have to know their stuff. They have to have the knowledge. But then once we get talking to people, we would really want to be assured that they can also deliver that in a way that is engaging to our audiences. So what you talk about, the charisma part of that. And as content creators, as learning designers, we also see it as our job to bring out the best in our subject matter experts. So we are there to help formulate the narrative, help formulate the framework in which our SMEs can shine. So a bit like you're helping us out today.
You're helping me out more.
We're helping each other, and you're guiding us through a narrative and keeping us on track. And actually, that is what our learning content creators should be doing. That's what people in my team do.
I think it's just being relatable, isn't it? And I think the podcast called Live and Learn, but I think we're a big believer in showing some mistakes or weakness can also be really helpful for end users. If it's just a professor who obviously could master that subject, that's great. But sometimes as an end user, I could sit there thinking, well, that's never going to be me, or that's not relevant to me. So I think it's that human element we find works really well. And obviously we use humour, but that's just one tactic you can use. But I think it's bridging that gap between, you don't think someone's way over here in terms of their knowledge, and you're never going to get there. So I think there's that element as well, not being too out of reach sometimes as well.
Yeah, and it's you're making it real all the time, aren't you? You're like trying to really make it experience near for people, because the minute something is experienced near for someone, then they care about it. And so your SME is a really great way to do that. They can really give you the details of what it is like to be, on the front line and, in that role, doing that job. So subject matter experts are a really great way to do that.
I bet they have some great stories to tell as well from that experience. And we talked actually in the other podcast again about the importance of storytelling. And again, those SMEs probably have so much breadth of experience that they can bring those and captivate those stories and really bring certain scenarios to life.
And what would you say? I think we touched on it before. Internal SMEs. So that's a very different skill set in some ways. I mean, you might have examples, say, of an internal SME who knows their stuff, but maybe doesn't have the confidence. So an external SME, they might be a freelancer, they do that as a profession. That's a very different process. There's loads of really good knowledge and an internal talent pool. What would your tips be on bringing out maybe people who lack the confidence or maybe don't feel they are an SME but actually are, or they're kind of more respected than they think by their peers, and you want to get that knowledge out with an e-learning course? Is that something you've come across, or ways you can kind of get that out for them?
Yeah, so we're always making judgment calls about exactly at what point in the content creation process can our experts add value? So it could be that someone horizon scans for us. And so that is a way that we might use some of the expertise. They might just check content for accuracy to make sure that, we're not putting any clangers in there. And if they are able and confident to appear on camera, then we would ask them to then also be in the media, but we would support them with that. So we are bringing our neuroscientific principles. We are making sure that everything that they talk about links to the learning objectives, and we're kind of guiding them on that journey. And that might be very active. So it might be on camera together, a bit like we're doing today, guiding the narrative, or it might be a little bit more behind the scenes where we are interviewing them perhaps without the presenter on camera, and then just cutting it to really make sure that they're comfortable. They're comfortable and they're shining.
But it can work really well, can't it? Because if you know somebody, that's Jess, or that's Sarah, or that's Steve, that is really powerful, rather than, again, what I was saying before, you've got someone who kind of feels 3 degrees removed from you, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, having that relationship in the first instance where you respect each other, you trust each other, you want to work together and support each other, makes a massive difference.
And we always wrap up our podcast with our live and learn examples. I think, Jess, you've been thinking about this apparently on the tube in. Have you got a live and learn example of SME content, particular working with SMEs, that you could maybe share an anecdote with people listening?
This is probably says more about me than it says about anyone else. And I think there's probably two examples in my personal life. So I play a lot of hockey. My mum also plays hockey, and she's recently had trials for England over 65s or something.
Okay.
So she's got a lot of experience. Do I ever listen to anything my mum's told me playing hockey? No. I'd listen to a separate coach, but it's that kind of connection with my mum where I probably wouldn't listen to most things that she would tell me. But I also think again about in my hockey career, if you turn up to a training session and the coach isn't there, I'm just not interested. If it's being run by somebody who I don't necessarily, not that I don't respect them as a player, but if they haven't got that expertise, I'm not that keen on joining in. Whereas, you know, when you turn up and the coach is there, absolutely, I'll give it 100% every single time. So just thinking about how it resonates in your personal life is quite interesting sometimes.
That's a really good example.
Did you have any?
What can I tell you about subject matter experts?
This is going to go on a website. I can see the cogs turning there. What can I share, not share?
What can I say about subject matter experts? I have been interviewing. I worked in television before I ever worked in digital learning. So in a way, I have been interviewing experts of one sort or another for a very, very long time. And I remember very fondly that I once got big bunch of flowers from Marty Pellow of Wet, Wet, Wet fame. Am I showing my age there?
I know Wet, 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 don't worry. If anyone doesn't know, they're not welcome on the show. Yeah.
And he said, and it said, "Oh, thanks for a lovely interview." And I have to say that I think that was the moment at which I just thought, actually, there is such power in creating an environment where two people can have a really good conversation,
Good chat.
A really good chat, really good chat like we've had today. We'll be sending you flowers.
I was about to say, apologies. Free lunches, but often not flowers. I'm really sorry.
I'll take a free lunch.
That's all. In the post.
But there's such power in having those conversations with people, and they're the kind of conversations that impact both, you know, the interviewer and the interviewee. And so, that's like a very, the power of getting it right, I think.
Yes. Well, I've loved having you both back on.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you so much for expertise and insights. I'm sure there's lots of good takeaways, everybody. And really appreciate your time. And hopefully you come back again sometime.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers.